So the Vikings could be adding a big-name wide receiver to the offense very soon, someone who not only has history with Kyler Murray, but also wants to be a Viking, which he made very clear. So I'll talk about that and explore some of the pros and cons, as well as explore why Justin Jefferson is an absolute steal on his current contract, an update on the Vikings quarterback room, and more. But first... Alright, first up, Justin Jefferson's contract is looking like an absolute bargain today after the Seahawks signed Jackson Smith-Njigba to a record-setting deal. It's a 4-year, $168.6 million extension with $120 million guaranteed, making JSN the new highest paid receiver of all time, earning $42.15 million annually, so almost $2 million more than Jamar Chase. Seattle wisely paid him as soon as they could after his third season, and they picked up his fifth-year option as well, so if you factor in the final year of his rookie deal, plus the fifth-year option, it's basically like a 6-year contract with an APY of around $32.5 million. Yet still, at face value with the extension alone, he's making over $7 million more than Justin Jefferson per season. Jettis does have some massive cap hits in 2027 and 2028, plus a void year in 2029, and if I had to guess, he's probably going to restructure that current deal again down the road. But the point is, a couple years ago, everyone was arguing whether the $35 million per year that Jefferson got was really worth it, but just 2 years later, you've got both Jamar Chase and now JSN clearing him by over $5 million APY. Plus, Puka Nacua will probably reset the market again soon as well when he signs his extension. There's a chance that Jefferson is the 4th or 5th highest paid at his position soon, which feels like a massive steal. And then look at some of the receivers close behind him in terms of APY. DK Metcalf, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, even Alec Pierce if you go a little further down the list. All solid players. This isn't a shot or a knock on them, but I think the gap between them and Justin Jefferson is a lot bigger than their discrepancy in pay suggests. Now, I know Justin is coming off a down year production-wise, career lows in yards and touchdowns, which is kind of crazy considering he missed 7 games in 2023, but I think we can all agree that last season was an outlier because he still had 141 targets. They were trying to get him the ball, but the inconsistent play at quarterback resulted in him hauling in less than 60% of those targets. Sure, he had 5 drops as well. I've seen some people kind of come at Justin Jefferson, more so in the season, saying, well, some of this is on him because he's been struggling with drops. Well, according to PFF, he had 5 drops, but that was actually the 3rd fewest amount of drops in his career and is nowhere near the main reason for the lack of production in 2025. Justin is still just 26 years old as well, about to turn 27 in June, so he's got several years of high-end production left, in my opinion. And I know this is probably me just being a homer here, I'll be the first to admit that, because a lot of people would rather have Puka Nacua or JSN as their top wideout, especially because they're younger, but for my money, still give me Justin Jefferson. I think he bounces back in a big way in 2026, Hopefully he and Kyler can build some rapport here quickly because I do think that Kyler is going to be the week 1 starter in all likelihood. And aside from Justin Jefferson and of course Jordan Addison, another receiver that Kyler could be throwing passes to in 2026 is DeAndre Hopkins. D-Hop was recently spotted by TMZ and they asked him about Kyler Murray and whether or not he'd be interested in reuniting with him on the Vikings. Hopkins said that Kyler is like family to him and that if he or the Vikings needed him, they know he'll be there. So the interest from D-Hop's side is very evident. And while we don't know what the interest level from the Vikings is, we do know they need to bring in at least one more receiver after Jalen Nailor signed with the Raiders. Hopkins isn't the same player he once was. He's about to turn 34 years old and hasn't topped 1,000 yards since 2023. He's also bounced around a bit the last few years between the Titans, the Chiefs, and Ravens, but he has some chemistry with Kyler, or at least some history together, and the two are close off the field, so that doesn't hurt. One of D-Hop's best seasons actually came in 2020 with Kyler throwing him the rock. Now, unfortunately, D-Hop dealt with some injuries in 2021 and 2022, but he's actually been fairly healthy since then. He's only missed one game over the past 3 seasons. DeAndre is coming off career lows in catches and yards with the Ravens in 2025, but he only played around 33% of the snaps on offense. Meanwhile, the Vikings utilized their number 3 receivers a lot more under KOC. You can see their snap counts here. The thing is, if you want to push back a little bit against this idea of signing Hopkins, I will say I don't think he would be the perfect one-for-one replacement for Jalen Nailor. D-Hop has lined up primarily on the outside over his career. Even last year, nearly 73% of his snaps were spent with him lined up on the outside. Meanwhile, Jalen Nailor was in the slot for over 60% of his snaps last season. That's not to say it can't work. After all, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are both guys that can pretty comfortably line up all over the field, so I think KOC can make it work, or maybe they sign D-Hop plus bring in another guy via free agency or the draft that can specialize more in the slot. Who really knows? If they bring in DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray has something to do with it, You can probably go ahead and pencil in Kyler as the week 1 starter. That really wouldn't be a shock. Most people already are of the mind that it's Kyler's job to lose at this point, and I definitely agree to a certain extent. Now, with that said, a lot has been made about who the perceived QB2 will be. The signing of Carson Wentz sent people into a frenzy. You had Vikings fans and even some media members thinking that JJ McCarthy would either be traded or be demoted to QB3 after Carson Wentz was brought back. Well, I've said from the very beginning that I think the Wentz signing had more to do with depth than anything else. Think of 2023 and 2025. Both of the seasons that this team missed the playoffs under KOC, quarterback injuries were kind of the root cause. There's definitely some more nuance to it than that, but I think what the Wentz signing ultimately came down to was KOC not wanting to see any more Jaren Halls and Max Brosmers being thrown out there in important regular season games. It's simply raising the floor of the QB room, which is never a bad idea because both Kyler and JJ McCarthy have durability concerns. And the reason I'm bringing this up in the first place is because Adam Schefter kind of backed that up today, backed up what I'm saying, that is. He was on the Pat McAfee show today, and he said that he doesn't think the Wentz signing dictates JJ McCarthy's future, and that again, it just gives them more depth at the position to kind of round out the room. We heard Tom Pelissero say basically that exact same thing last week on K-Fan, and then Alec Lewis of The Athletic actually put out an article today, and in that he said that the signing of Carson Wentz is not a referendum on JJ McCarthy's future, and that when Wentz chose to sign back with Minnesota, he didn't get any impression that the Vikings were going to move on from McCarthy. So I don't really know how many different insiders and people that are actually close to the team need to say this in order for some fans to believe it, but JJ McCarthy is not going anywhere in 2026, and he is most likely the backup quarterback unless he somehow beats out Kyler Murray for the starting job. Love it or hate it, that's just the reality right now. And speaking of JJ McCarthy, in this same article from Alec Lewis today, he said that JJ has been spending a lot of time training out in California with one of the top private quarterback coaches, John Beck. He actually trained JJ ahead of the 2024 draft, and now they're working together again this offseason. The mechanical issues have been a point of emphasis, as well as trying to apply more touch on passes when needed. So I'll be eager to see how much of that training pays off and if JJ can take a big leap in 2026. I still think it's Kyler's job to lose, but there's nothing wrong with a very competitive camp battle. I know the old saying is if you've got 2 QBs competing for a job, then you've really got no QB at all. But given the Vikings' current situation, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. But hey, you guys got to let me know your thoughts on the Vikings quarterback room and some of the recent comments made by Alec Lewis and Adam Schefter, as well as DeAndre Hopkins potentially coming to Minnesota to reunite with Kyler Murray. And to switch gears here for a second, guys, I did want to mention the tragedy that took place over this weekend. I'm sure most of you are aware by now that Jessi Pierce and her 3 kids tragically lost their lives in a house fire in White Bear Lake. Jessi covered the wild and was a part of the Score North podcast network, and if you guys want to check it out, they did a really beautiful tribute episode on Purple Daily earlier today. The link to that is in the description below, as is the GoFundMe for Jessi's husband, Mike. I can't even imagine what he's going through right now, so definitely just thinking about him and all this. And again, if you guys feel compelled to do so, the link to donate is in the description below.